I'm John Kaiser at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver, taking place May 10 to the 11th, 2024. I am here with Rebecca Hunter, Vice President of Exploration of Forum Energy Metals Corp. Rebecca, welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, you have a project in Nunavut surrounding the Gavic project of Orano, on which it spent over $150 million, bringing it to a point where it had a mining permit ready to be granted to it, but then it suddenly stopped and did not go forward. Why did Orano not develop the Gavic deposits, which had 133 million pounds of U3O8 indicated, and what would it take to revive it as a new mining center for uranium in the Nunavut area?
So I guess I can't speak exactly for Orano, but I mean, Fukushima, I think, was the big catalyst that basically dropped the uranium price to a state where it wasn't feasible anymore. But the bigger thing was that when they were just about to be granted their basically development permit, they wouldn't say a timeline. They didn't want to set a timeline. And so basically the permitting people said, well, we can't grant you a development if you're not going to commit, I guess, to a timeline. So that was the biggest thing. And then so after that, they just pulled out and focused on other areas. So that was the biggest thing. And then what would it take? I think, it's already, 133 million pounds. There's a few other zones too in that area that they were working on at the time. It's not in their resource, but there is more pounds in the ground even on their side of things. But for us, I think they're watching closely. They want to see what we're going to do there. I think, if we can build up, north of 200 million pounds, I think, that's going to be very interesting to them. And anything we find, I think, is going to be very interesting to them.
Yeah, that's the reason I'm sort of asking the question is if you increase what is already known on what you now call the Aberdeen project, there could be a critical mass that says, okay, we're definitely going to do this again. And I guess my question was, with the permitting cycle already pretty much done, you wouldn't have to start from scratch anymore to get that rolling.
No, they would have to dust off their feasibility and
update that.
And then, yeah, the price is really nice now. And then if we find more, I think, you build that up to 250 million pounds, it becomes a district. If you're mining 10 million pounds a year, you've got a 25-year mine life for that area. Mm-hmm. And then there's still lots more potential.
Now, at the time you worked for Cameco at the, what you call the Athabasca project, where the main zone emerged. And, but then afterwards, Cameco completely abandoned it to the point where they even let the claims lapse, enabling you in 2022 to stake this large area, even beyond what I believe Cameco held at the time. Why did Cameco pull out? Was it because they just didn't see critical mass for standalone?
I think, again, it was a casualty of Fukushima and the price drop. And Cameco, before Fukushima, had a big mandate to explore all over the world. And the Thelon was a part of that. So everything outside the Athabasca was essentially their worldwide exploration. And then when, the prices were really bad, they had to make tough decisions. And so they really came back to the Athabasca in a big way. And the Thelon was a casualty of that. And I think in the end, it just came down to budgets. The exploration department, was over 100 people and went down to 20, when it got really, the price.
Mm-hmm. Now, a question I always ask when somebody takes over a project that a lot of money had been spent on by another party and it just didn't really achieve critical mass, what are you going to be doing differently from the predecessor that will result in a better outcome? And you've got a 10,000 meter program scheduled to start in June.
Yeah.
And 8,000 meters of that are for these ant targets that you have developed within the structure that hosts the main zone. What does an ambient noise tomography survey do? How does that help you generate additional targets? What is this all about?
So the big thing, so we're not doing a whole lot different because we're basically kind of starting where I left off. But yeah, the ANT, the ambient noise tomography, what it allows, it's not a new technique, but it's kind of gaining more traction. But it can basically use a passive seismic technique to image the subsurface. And why I think it's going to work really well in the Thelon is that basically it's measuring, it's all geophysics, but it's measuring velocity differences. And there's a lot of clay associated with these types of deposits. That'll have a significant change in basically velocity it has a lower velocity, and rocks that are like your countertop that haven't been affected by fluids that would create uranium deposits are hard. So you get a really nice contrast. And so why I like it is because it can actually image that in the subsurface, and there's no other technique that can do that. So it really is telling you, if it works, exactly where your mineralization should be at depth. And so then you have a much greater precision on where to target. And
okay, so you've got the 700 by 1,500 meter gravity low, which is basically just a plan view.
Yeah.
And within it, crossing through it, are several structures, of which the key one you already know hosts the main zone. And what the ANT does, it helps you see the change in density in the third dimension. And you've got a graphic in your presentation which shows that you have 3 or 4 similar type of low density, low gravity settings along that structure at a similar depth of 80 to 100 and 180 meters. So to put things into context, given the sort of approximate dimensions of the main zone as you know it right now, how would you go about just back of the envelope come up with a tonnage footprint without worrying about grade? How would you go about doing this? Is really to educate our audience about how to start thinking about the results as they start coming out.
Yeah, so I mean, this is all preliminary, of course, but a back of the envelope sort of thing is that you look at just the general dimensions. It's more complicated than that. But so we have about a 200 meter strike length of known mineralization. It still needs to be infilled. 50 meters width, again, could be expanded, but that's what we have so far in these kind of steep lenses. And then those lenses so far go about 60, 70 meters. So you kind of get a volume there. And so if you think about it on the order of that, it kind of gives you kind of the size. And then, a grade, if we just use the Gavic, grade, if it ends up kind of being a mining grade similar to theirs, that's 0.5 to 0.6. And then the density. Yeah,
the density is the part most people don't understand. They all know how to do a rectangle a rectangular type of body, length times width times height gives you the cubic meter volume. But what is the tonnage? You have to multiply it by something called specific gravity, which is the density of the rock. For something like this that's basement hosted, that's going to grade 0.5% to 1% U3O8, what would be the kind of specific gravity we should be using when you start publishing new intersections and start showing repetitions of the main zone?
So we did do a little bit back in the Cameco days. So kind of the specific gravities that we were getting were kind of 2.4 to 2.6. So that's kind of what I would use. And we're going to be doing a bunch more, like very systematic, so that we can actually build a resource at Athabasca. So we'll know better this year, but that's kind of the range that we had.
So because the grade is low, it's not like say a McArthur River where you got 16% and you end up with like 6 to 8 specific gravity. Here you actually have a specific gravity less than the typical specific gravity for rock because it's been so altered and rotted by the hydrothermal system, and the amount of uranium is not off the scale like at McArthur River.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, you mentioned in the presentation, it says you have ANT survey results pending for the Bjorn and the Ned.
Yeah.
The Ned targets, and these are different in that they're in the northern part of your property, which actually overlaps the sandstone of the Thelon Basin, where Orano has all its deposits, and where you are working most of your drilling this summer. That's that the sandstone's been eroded away. We're dealing with basement hosted systems, which typically are going to be lower grade. But the hope is that these gravity lows that you have at surface also yield an idea of at what depth these lower density is. And when you start drilling these targets, and you've got, I think, about 1,500 meters or so earmarked for that, the potential is that at the unconformity, we start getting Athabasca Basin type grades, like 5% or higher.
Yeah.
And then you don't need a very large deposit to end up with a very, very valuable discovery. But a question I have, since I'm more familiar with the Athabasca Basin than the Thelon Basin, has high-grade mineralization at the unconformity ever been found in the Thelon Basin, or is this something that still has to be established?
This still has to be established. And so the only evidence that it could exist is also when I was with Cameco, we had the grid called the Ira Grid, which is another area I still want to get back to. It has sandstone, fairly thin sandstone, so 10 meters to about 50 meters of sandstone there, completely altered. So full of clay and also enriched in uranium, not tons. So it's sandstone, so it's kind of 10 ppm, so not high, but still orders of magnitude richer than what a non-mineralized sandstone would be. So that's the first evidence that at least the processes are happening. And I think that's very encouraging, because that shows that it can happen elsewhere on the property. Or there's something hidden at Ira too that we still have yet to uncover.
Now most of the historical exploration in the Athabasca Basin has been on the eastern flank, where the basin sandstone cover is shallower. In the middle, it gets very deep, and some companies have attempted, but nobody has really had any luck. The Thelon Basin is just as big, if not bigger, than the Athabasca Basin. But how rapid does the basement deepen in the Thelon Basin, so that suddenly, say you have a breakthrough and you hit like something really high grade and say, yes, these also formed here.
Yeah.
How far out into the basin can one go before it's hopelessly deep?
Well, we don't I mean, there's very limited data. Even on our property, it varies. That's because we have big those big faults that I think are controlling the mineralization also kind of downdrop or throw the sandstone. So there's areas along those faults where the sand can be a bit deeper, like 400 meters. But then it seems to shallow within our property to, like I said, 60 or 100. But yeah, as you move deeper, I think there's early seismic stuff that suggests that at least the middle of the Thelon is 2 kilometers. So as you move out, you're definitely going to start dropping past 500 meters. I think what we have on our property is all under 500 meters. And some of it significantly shallower.
So when you staked all that ground surrounding Gavic, you had kept that in mind as to how deep does the sandstone go. So in terms of accessibility, you've pretty much got it all nailed in that area. If you get lucky and prove that these high-grade unconformity associated deposits are also present in the Thelon.
Yeah, no, I was very cognizant of that, because we know it already costs, a fair amount to be working up there. You certainly don't want to be drilling super deep holes if you don't have to.
Now you also have I mean, Forum's been in the Athabasca Basin for a long time. Thelon Basin is a new development since 2022. You have multiple properties. Some are joint ventures with all parties participating. Some are farm outs. Some are 100%. Given the revival of interest in uranium exploration, now that $90 a pound seems to be like the new level for uranium, where deposits are worth exploring for and developing. Is there any activity going on any of these projects in 2024 that could be a pleasant surprise for Forum shareholders?
So yeah, we're still working away on our Athabasca portfolio. So we have our Grease River project we're optioning, or we have an option partner, Traction Uranium. So we're just doing geophysics. We're probably doing more ant work. We're doing gravity and just kind of basically getting targets essentially. So maybe drilling potentially, that's probably early, but potentially drilling that one in 2025. And we're also in discussions on a few other projects too. So there might be a pleasant surprise in the near future that we'll also be working some of these other projects as well.
Now, one of the things the market's really going to be watching is as you start testing these other ant targets within the Tadagaca gravity low, if you start intersecting uranium mineralization, will you be able to do these radiometric equivalence assays such as Canalaska has been doing for West MacArthur and publish them, or is the grade too low for that to be reliable?
No, it's not a question of reliability. I think it's just capacity within our group, because you have to basically calibrate your instruments and then kind of make a good guess of what kind of grades you're dealing with. We can certainly publish our scintillometer results, which give you an idea. At least that it's mineralized high or low. But no, we won't be doing the equivalents, at least this year, maybe down the road. And then basically getting them out to assay as quickly as possible.
So what these days is the time from submitting a core for assay to getting geochemical assays for uranium?
I guess it depends how busy the labs are. So if you're quick and it's not too busy, it's a month usually. But if it's busy and backed up, it can take several months. It depends. But we want to trickle them in throughout the summer so that we make sure we're getting them in, not just in a batch at the end of the season.
Okay. And the budget for this program is what, and what is your current financial situation?
So the budget is about 10 million. So we're actively spending that, about 7.5 million on drilling alone. And then, the current, like the corporate, we're trading at 11 cents right now. So just a 32 million market cap. We're a really good deal. And I don't think, based on, the good project that this is, like the Aberdeen project, we shouldn't be there for long, hopefully, and have good results this summer.
Now, would you drill the Ned and Bjorn targets last, or would you take care of them in the beginning just in case they're real?
I think my plan is to actually focus on Tadagac at the start. Okay. And so basically one drill, there's two drills. So one drill will be kind of expanding to the west, and the other one I want to keep expanding to the east, because I want to show that we have much more than 200 meters of strike length in this area.
Now, I noticed that you did the ant survey over the entire 700 by 1500 meter anomaly. And in your current presentation, you're just showing the long section on the main structure. But I found in an earlier presentation, you actually had a different orientation of targets. So have these other structures also yielded targets, not just the main one that has the main zone?
Yes. So for presentation purposes, I like showing that one long section of the Tadagac fault. And that's definitely, it's already mineralized. So we're definitely going to focus on that, and we can chase that structure really nice with the ANT. But there's two other structures that look very favorable. So we'll be chasing those as well.
And the Gavic, did I pronounce it correctly?
Gavic,
is there, should we cross our fingers for that one?
Yeah, well, it's mineralized. So we're just going to probably do a couple holes. And again, similar to Tadagac, a lot of the holes we drilled in the last cycle were steep, kind of sub-parallel to these steep lenses. Same goes for Gavic. And so I want to drill a couple more oblique holes at a better angle to basically showcase the potential there as well.
So the goal this year is primarily to test this main Tatigaca gravity low, see what's all there, and set the stage for a much bigger delineation drilling program. And what we as investors are going to be watching for is evidence of repetition of main zone scale zones of mineralization associated with these, ideally associated with these ant targets, so that we know the ant surveys are a useful tool. So that, I think, will be your tipping point that gets the market excited about you this summer. I've been talking with Rebecca Hunter, Vice President of Exploration for Forum Energy Metals Corp in Vancouver at the Metals Investor Forum. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.